right over to Marco to get started. Marco.
Thanks, Sherry. I'm not sure about anybody else, but I could definitely listen to Harry Belafonte all day, all day. Good afternoon and almost noon, everyone. Can everybody hear me? I'm definitely seeing some head shaking, so that's a good sign. So I am Marco Giordano, your CEO, and I thank you all again for joining us today. And I hope everyone has had the ability to stay warm during these unusually cold days across the country. At the time when people have been struggling for months, struggling financially, struggling with their physical, mental, and emotional well-being, the cold, wet weather can create a perfect storm, no pun intended there. The unusually cold weather and the impact it can have, much like the pandemic, has truly caused us to appreciate all that we have. This week, we're also recognizing the very heartbreaking mark in the pandemic of reaching 500,000 people, 500,000 mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, friends, neighbors, and other loved ones that have been lost in the United States as a result of COVID-19. You know, we've all been impacted by COVID-19. We've all been impacted in similar ways, but also very different ways. But I don't think any one of us can claim that we have not been impacted. So I'm going to ask that we appreciate this moment, the here and now, by just pausing for a moment to take a deep breath together. So join me. In my inbox, like many of you, I have an opportunity to hear from experts in their field and many other fields. And this weekend, I came across a quote that I'd like to share with you. And the quote went like this: "Look up, look out, look forward. The signs of hope that had once seemed as unreachable as the most distant star are suddenly within our grasp. Indeed, we could see the future, but only if we ground ourselves in this moment." When I read this quote, I was reminded of a conversation I had with Stephanie at the end of last week about our compliance processes, recognizing that while at times our work requires us to look down and focus on what happened, there always remains an opportunity to look up, look out, and look forward. Not much different than what each of us must do or need to do during this pandemic. Making the most of our now, each of our nows, by appreciating and being aware of where we each are. You know, so much has changed since last March of 2020. We are not the same today in February of 2021. So pausing to reflect, to understand, to be aware of where you are along that path will allow you to set your eyes on what lies ahead, to be ready to take the next steps, because we're learning so much can be out of our control, but also by making the most of the current moment. This quote was a reminder for me to remain positive during these challenging times. I hope it provides you the same. So as we all continue down this path together and approach the 1-year mark in a few weeks, believe it or not, pause and take time for yourself to look up, look out, and look forward. With that, I'll turn the mic back over to Sherry. Thank you.
Thanks, Marco. And Hannah, if you can pull up the agenda one more time. So while we're waiting for that, as usual, we're going to show you all the different ways that you can submit your questions today. We do have a pretty short agenda, so you will have lots of times for questions. I can see we have Nina and Sheena on the call. So we do have folks here to answer those vaccine related questions. But as usual, we'll be taking you through the COVID numbers. June is going to be doing that today. And then I'm excited to share that we have Ricky to give us a presentation around COVID fatigue. So I suspect many of us are feeling that. So thank you, Ricky. And then just a couple of quick reminders. You are going to get an email this week that is also related to the vaccine Q&A. So that is from a town hall a few weeks ago where we did an excerpt of the Q&A, many again that Sheena and Nina answered. So just to remind us, certainly we really want to encourage you this week to submit all of your questions. As always, most people use the chat, but you also have the Your Voice option as well as the COVID-19 inbox. And of course, that's a way to sort of keep who asked confidential. So with that, June, I am going to turn it over to you to give us an update on the numbers.
Sorry, let me unmute. Thank you, Sherry. I'm June Hodges, and I'll review our COVID-19 data summary. We've received a total of 2,440 reports since March of 2020. And of those, 678 have been confirmed cases, 1,012 of negative, 100 suspected, and 649 possible exposure. One did fall into a miscellaneous unknown category, which we have not gotten a result from somebody who left our facility before they left. As a reminder for COVID reporting, classifying a case as suspected is when someone is showing symptoms of COVID but has not yet received confirming results from tests. Classification for possible exposure is when someone has come in close contact with someone who has a confirmed case of COVID. At this time, just so you can get the perspective, what all this means, I'm going to share the screen to show the chart. Okay, I'm trying to share the screen. Okay, somehow this is not working. Does anybody see the screen? Okay, good. So we continue to see a downward trend since the beginning of January. And nationally, this is following the same trend where the cases have declined over 44% in the last 2 weeks. So this is great, and we hope to be optimistic going forward. But we all, of course, need to do our part by following the protocols that are based on the CDC guidelines, and be vigilant. The 4 W's: wear a mask at all times at the program and in offices, wash your hands, watch your distance, and the last, wait for gatherings. Just a reminder, we still need some updates on the reports where we have not gotten the status confirming of those previously reported cases. So we're going to be reaching out to programs for that. And that's all I have to say today. And thank you so much. Back to you, Sherry.
Thanks, June. And so we are going to pass it over now to Ricky to talk about COVID fatigue. And we just want to pause here a moment to give Hannah a chance to pull up the presentation.
Oh, no. That's what I'm saying. Do we pay her? Because I talked to Tony and
I have to unmute myself. All right, everybody's good?
everybody.
Okay, we can all see the slides, I imagine. So I'm going to, full disclosure and transparency, while I'm talking to you guys here today, my children's lunch is about to end, so I'm going to keep them at bay, but I think it fits into this conversation about COVID fatigue pretty well. So hopefully they don't interrupt, but if they do, I apologize in advance. So we're going to talk a little bit about COVID fatigue. I want to just share that it has a couple other names you might have heard: pandemic fatigue, caution fatigue, disaster fatigue. Disaster fatigue is the overarching category that the majority of the research around historic events is labeled that disaster fatigue. So that's what we'll largely focus on, but all the stuff that I have read around COVID fatigue fits in perfectly. Hannah, are you doing the slides? Can you move on to the next one? Thank you. So disaster fatigue, I want to note, is a really natural and common communal experience, often characterized by a lack of motivation, a lack of interest in staying safe, in following guidelines. Disaster fatigue has a couple different phases to them, and those phases are fluid depending on who you are as a person, what your coping mechanisms are, your resources, your natural supports, and other things like that. But typically, a disaster starts with a phase around being heroic, a honeymoon stage where people and communities pull together, they support one another. There's a sense of community bonding and altruism that comes in that. And that is, I think we all might remember that from early on, looking out for each other, maybe getting an extra pack of toilet paper for your neighbor if they needed it. We were all really trying to make sure everybody was okay. And again, these stages are not hard-lined in terms of the length of time that they last, but typically that's about the first 6 months or so. And then that next stage, which is where most of us would fall right now, is called the disillusionment phase. And so reality starts to set in that it's going to be a long haul to get back to normal. And that shared sense of community is replaced by some looking out for yourself. So people start to really fend and take care of themselves and their loved ones and their household with more rigidity than they did previously. In addition, during this disillusionment phase, people start to get worn out. There's a lot of information, a constant stream of information, misinformation as well, spreads really easily. And so people start to lose some optimism. They start to question their government. They start to question the service delivery systems. And in that, the vigilance that we had earlier on is often replaced by some denial, right? It won't happen to me, or some sense of like nihilism. We're all screwed anyhow, so I might as well go and do whatever I want because it's not going to make a difference. And that can certainly lead to some reckless behavior in response to this feeling of overwhelm. The good news is that after this disillusionment phase, there is a recovery stage that we will likely, hopefully get to soon. And in that recovery phase, the characteristics of it are really dependent on how the previous phases were managed. But one thing that is consistent across the board is that communities start to pull together again. You start to shop local to help local businesses and your neighbor's business. You start to take care of one another again because we realize we're all in this together. Next slide. So why is this happening during a disaster? Well, there's 3 really main reasons that are somewhat understandable. The first being uncertainty, right? There is uncertainty in every part of our lives right now, all at the same time. We have a lack of sense of control. Our culture, our values, our way of life is being threatened. And so uncertainty can drive some anxiety. In addition, we've got an endless list of loss. And I'm not just talking about the human loss, which is enormous, as Marco mentioned, the loss of health, the loss of finances, the loss of community, but we've also got a loss of boundaries, right? Many of us are holding simultaneous functions and roles at the same time, working, parenting, teaching, caregiving. And that loss of boundary, that blurred line can be really challenging to manage. We've also lost some of the things that we used to do to cope. Things that we used to enjoy that gave life meaning have changed or have been put off limits, are harder to access. And so this endless list of loss can drive some depression. So we've got uncertainty that drives anxiety and loss that drives depression. And in addition to that, we've got this desensitization to stress, which is, I think, really, really important to understand. So if you're in the woods and you see a bear, you go into fight or flight mode. Your brain pumps some cortisol to help you identify that this bear is a risk, it's dangerous, and you should do something about it. But if you see a bear every day for a year, or every hour, every day for a year, your brain gets so flooded with that cortisol, it stops doing its job. And eventually you see the bear and go, it's another bear. And you don't necessarily identify it as great a risk, and you don't necessarily respond by doing something in the same way that you would have. So this desensitization to risk and to stress, the desensitization to stress drives risk taking. So people are feeling anxious and depressed and a little bit more willing to take risks. And this is exhausting and overwhelming, hence the fatigue. Next slide. So what does this look like? You've got a list up there that I'm sure you all can see. I'm going to ask folks, if you can, think about what symptoms you're feeling during this time, almost a year into COVID, and maybe put some things in the chat, whether they're on my list or not. I think it's important to normalize what we're all feeling, because we really are all feeling these things. It's not just you, it's not just me. We're in it together, and it's very, very normal. One thing I want to specifically highlight, though, on this list is in the practical column, there's this note that our baseline functioning has decreased. So I don't know about you, but a lot of people I know don't get dressed every day anymore. They don't clean their houses in the same way they used to. And so that lowering our baseline functioning to daily tasks is really important to note, and to be aware of that it is normal. It's not a sign that something's wrong with you. It's a sign that you are a normal person experiencing really abnormal situation. I also want to mention that as a result of a lot of this, employee assistance programs across the country and across any country that's experiencing, or any community that's experiencing a disaster, tends to go up a lot. And I spoke with Christy earlier at RHD. Ours have gone up as well, following that trend, about 25%. And what's really important to note in that is that people are accessing our well-being offerings in ways that they haven't in the past, with a heavy emphasis on the fact that we have something for everybody. So whether you're looking for new meals to make, or a new fitness regime, or something cultural to expose yourself to, or community activity to connect with, we have those opportunities here at RHD, and people are using them more than they did previously, which is a really good sign, that people are recognizing that they need something to help them during this time. Ideally, we'd be using all that stuff all year round, every year, not just during a disaster, but I appreciate that RHD has that to offer, and that people are accessing it. So the big deal here is how to respond. Right? We know why this is happening. We know that it's normal. We know what it looks like, but how do we respond to it? And can you go to the next slide for me, please? Thank you. So there's a couple different things that we can do. And again, I'm going to encourage people, if there's something specific that has been helping you to manage COVID fatigue, or manage feeling overwhelmed or anxious or depressed, please put it in the chat and share with other people, because you never know who you're helping when you do that, giving somebody else an idea. I'm going to share some ideas as well on how to respond. The first being to calm the nervous system. We have to stop that fight or flight and help our brain recognize there is no immediate threat right now, so we can relax a little bit. And you've heard these things before about self-care, movement of some kind, or music, or deep breaths. Humor is really good medicine for the brain. But I just want to encourage folks that as you think about calming your nervous system and self-care, that you really think about restorative self-care, things that are taking care of your body and mind. We all love watching Netflix and binging a show for hours on end, or staring at our phone and the endless scrolling. We all do it, but that is not self-care. That is not calming your nervous system in any way. And in some cases, when you're consistently exposing yourself to so much media and social media, it actually gets your nervous system heightened again. So really actively think about restorative self-care. In addition, reflect and accept. Reflect and acknowledge this is hard. This is hard for all of us, right? There's been a profound impact on our lives as a result of this pandemic, and we're all experiencing it, and it's not easy. Many of us have hit a wall, and it's okay. Sometimes that's a sign you should lean on it, take a break for yourselves. But really important when you're reflecting on what you're feeling is that you name those feelings. When you name something and you give it language, your brain then is better able to regulate it, to identify what it is and do something about it. So talking about it or writing it down are really healthy ways to help you name what you're feeling and then start to get some control over it. In addition, some sense of positive affirmation, right? We are, I think, all of us doing the best we can. And we don't always give ourselves enough credit. We pay attention to the things that we're not doing or not accomplishing, or things on our to-do list that did not get checked off. We're all doing the best that we can in some really challenging situations. And it's important that we give ourselves that credit and we accept that not only am I doing the best I can, but so are you. Even if we don't follow the same guidelines, the same strategies, the same approaches to the situation, we're all doing what we think is best for ourselves, our loved ones, our family. And so in that acceptance, in that understanding that we're all trying as hard as we can, give yourself permission to not be everything all the time. Right? Cut yourself some slack, and then cut your neighbor some slack, because just like you, they're trying their best and they might not be everything that they want to be in this moment or everything that you expect from them. And in that feeling of lowering expectations and giving each other a break, we can return to a sense of community, a sense of in this together, right? And that can be really, really helpful. I also encourage everybody to think about what can you control. So you can control the things that I just talked about, how to calm your nervous system, how to acknowledge and accept the hard times we're all going through together. You can also actively focus on hope. Plan something that you can look forward to, whether that be in the summer. Maybe you're looking forward to, fingers crossed, kids going back to school in the fall. You could plan a trip for next New Year's, whatever it might be. Have something that gives you hope, that helps you moving forward and looking forward. We can also incorporate things that we enjoy, goals and goals of mastery into our routine, whether that be daily, weekly, monthly. They give you something to look forward to doing in the moment, and also a sense of accomplishment for in the future. So if you're, you want to read more books this year, or you want to learn a new skill, those are things that we can do to give ourselves some sense of control back and some sense of meaning again. I also encourage folks to think about what you've gained. This has been hard, and like we mentioned earlier, there's been a lot of loss, but there's also been some things gained. Many of us have gained more time with our family. Many of us have learned a new skill, or just recognized that we are able to be flexible, to persevere. We're tougher than we thought we were, maybe. Or maybe we're not, and we've just learned to accept those emotions and accept that we're not as tough as we thought we were, and that's okay too. So thinking about what you've gained is really important, and that's something that you can control that can help you, again, feel normal in this really abnormal situation. And lastly, I mentioned it earlier, but I really encourage folks to set boundaries for themselves in regards to media and social media. You can control that, and the media and social media has an ability to increase our stress. And again, misinformation is everywhere, so setting some boundaries for that is really important. And finally, I encourage folks to stay distant, but physically distant, not socially distant. We've made a lot of progress as a community, even though the numbers are still so staggering, and we can't give up on that progress by stopping adherence to protocols. So continuing to follow safety guidelines is really important. Finding spaces to connect, though, is equally as important. So focusing on relationships might be harder than it used to be, but it's worth it. And so find ways, whether that be setting up Zoom lunches or breakfasts, or virtual happy hours or game nights. It could be, if you're Zoom fatigued, over the phone, text somebody, call somebody. It's a novel idea. But find ways to keep those relationships active and going, because being socially distant does not mean that you need to lose your community and you lose your natural supports. They are still there and still really important for you and for them as well. They need you just as much as you need them, right? We're all in this together. So that's my presentation on COVID fatigue. I believe that the slide deck and some of the notes that I had that I was used as talking points are going to be up on the COVID website for folks if you want to review them, bring them to your teams, talk about it with your family. And if you have any questions for me or want me to join your conversations, I'm very happy to do so.
Thanks, Ricky.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. It's reminding me too, and I didn't speak to this, but maybe each time time off when we're not going anywhere helps. And I'm going to use that as a moment to remind folks that they have to use up their carryover time. I believe it's by April 1st. So I'm going to give a little plug there. But lots of comments, and keep sharing them, folks. I think people will find these suggestions helpful. Someone wrote a comment about living at work instead of working from home. So lots of interesting stuff there. Good food for thought about things we can do. So we are going to open it up now for the Q&A portion. And Sarah, why don't I start with you, because I think most of the chat on our side has been in response to Ricky. Do you have anything, Sarah?
I do have one question that came in before the meeting. And that is, residents are asking when they can visit family and increase activity in the community, like going to the library, after they have received their vaccinations. I don't know if that's a June question. Maybe. Or anyone?
I don't know that the library has been open for the public to visit. Is the city opening, you mean the city libraries, the free libraries?
I don't know. I think it's probably more just generally about like if our, if someone that we support has been vaccinated, they're asking questions about sort of when they're able to do some of the activities that they could do before, but, haven't been able to do during the pandemic. So I think they gave the library one as an example, but I think it's more about what are
Just in general
protocols changing or not, perhaps.
Yeah, so I think what we do is we rely on guidance from the state, local, and federal government. As you have seen on the news, they've been rolling back some of the restrictions as far as like what percent people can dine out in the restaurant. So, and they base that information on the current numbers. So as those numbers begin to decrease, the government will roll out information on how much more we're allowed to do in the public. So I would say we would just wait for that guidance. I wouldn't, jump at the chance of, going out and being exposed just yet until we start to see some of those numbers decline more. Because I think that's where we saw initially, where we saw initially is when they started opening up restaurants, and then we had the spike that happened after that, because everybody's chomping at the bit to, get out the house. Everybody has cabin fever. So yeah, I would just wait and see what the guidance is from the government.
And I would offer too, this is Brandon, that our protocols haven't changed just because we get the vaccine. So we're still practicing as if your risk is the same at this point. So just to keep that fresh in everyone's mind until we get clear guidance that it's safe to do so, we are continuing to practice COVID protocols even after folks have been vaccinated. So just to make that doubly clear.
That is per CDC guidance. That's correct.
Yes.
The only thing I might add to that would be that, especially for our folks that are medically fragile and challenged, let's refer some recommendations to their PCP. Because, what the CDC is making general for the general public, and we have folks that have special needs. So in addition to what the CDC is recommending, I'd reach out, especially again, at the risk of repeating for those that we're supporting that have medical fragility, I would reach out to their PCPs and get recommendations, individual recommendations.
Can I just also add to that point, just because you're vaccinated doesn't mean that you're free to just take off your mask and not social distance. We still don't know how the vaccination completely works. As far as you may be protected, but that doesn't mean that you can't still pass COVID on to someone else. So it's important that we still practice those means of keeping the numbers down for now until we know more.
Great, thank you. Sarah, unless you have more, I'm going to pass it to Hannah. She has a few. No? Okay, Hannah?
Hi guys. All right. So we got one earlier on. Someone just asked for people who have actually received the vaccine, how people are feeling. They also mentioned that they received both doses of the vaccine and that they weren't feeling very well. So they just wanted to see how other people have been doing. I'm not one of those people. I get mine this week, so I can't be the one to talk about it. But if anyone would like to share.
I had
Nina?
both doses.
Hi, hello.
So we actually have tried to stay away from people sharing, their thought. We want to leave it, really put it up to the experts to share possible side effects and what you can expect from getting the vaccine. So as a organization, we've kind of stayed away from sharing that feedback. I mean, people are open to, share it amongst themselves. But I just asked Nina if you could just give an update of, the side effects and um, what people could possibly expect after they get their vaccinations.
Yeah, so the side effects can range and it's really dependent on everybody because everybody's immune system is different. But for most folks, we talked about it before, is sight soreness, redness. Um, Also, some people have had complaints of like itchiness at the site. Uh, and then for generalized symptoms, just feeling like you're coming down with something. Some people will feel achy and tired, have a headache, like they're coming down with the flu or flu-like virus. But generally, those folks will recover in a day or two. And can I just add, for managing symptoms, I know there's a lot of questions about symptom management right now. If you have pain or discomfort, you should talk to your provider about taking over-the-counter medications such as ibuprofen or aspirin, antihistamines, or even Tylenol or acetaminophen. It's safe generally to take those medications post-vaccination, if you can take them, generally or normally. Some people can't take those medications because they have high blood pressure or they interact with other medications. But if you normally can take those medications, it's okay to take them post-vaccination to help manage some of those symptoms. However, they don't want you to take them before you get vaccinated because they're not sure how it may affect how your body reacts with the vaccine. So I just wanted to clear that up because I've been getting a lot of questions in the clinic from people who are getting vaccinated. Is it safe to take those medications?
Great. Thanks so much, Nina and Sheena. So next, we actually have Lauren. She's going to come on. Lauren, I think you should be able to unmute yourself.
I think so. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. So I just had a really quick question, just because I've been hearing this information and guidance. So I know that there has been some talks about the guidance regarding masking in terms of double masking now. And I'm just having a hard time piecing out if that's actual CDC guidance or if that's just anecdotal guidance from people. I just wanted to know one, what is our stance on double masking if it's necessary? And two, what's the appropriate way to actually double mask if we are saying that's the better protocol?
So as far as double masking, I don't know if it's directly on the CDC website. I believe I did see it on there. I've been reading so many different things. But the point of double masking is that it mimics the effect of a N95 mask. So if you're actually lucky enough to have an N95 mask, you can just wear that one mask. But just double masking gets you closer to that effect of having the N95 mask, which filters out really, really small aerosol particles. So like small particles like that would be found in a COVID-19 virus or tuberculosis. These masks are commonly used in, hospital isolations. So if you're lucky enough to have one, we have some here. The problem with N95 masks is that you have to be fitted for them. So there's a certain fit that it has to fit. I don't know if anybody's ever been fitted for N95. They put this hood on you, they spray this saccharin, they tell you to breathe in and out to see if you can taste it. And that's how you know that there's a correct seal on it. I don't know if Rebecca went over how to like kind of self-test the N95 if you haven't been fitted for one, but this is not a common mask that's available to the population. And there are a lot of counterfeit masks that are being made, counterfeit N95 masks. So if it's not from 3M company themselves, I would suggest not get purchasing an N95 mask. So the proper way to double mask is, the recommendation is to wear a surgical mask underneath, and then you can wear a mask of your choice over top of that. So either a cloth mask or another surgical mask, or a bandana, whatever people are using to double mask. But the ideal way is to use a surgical mask underneath.
Are we requiring that within, obviously if we go into the building, are we requiring that of staff who are interacting with individuals to double mask at this point?
No, we are not. It's not. The CDC guidance says if you are a medical provider and you treat people all day long, that wearing a mask and a shield is a very simplistic double masking. But if you're just in and out, it's not required that your mask, normal mask, is sufficient. And that is on their website.
I would only add that we have held since the beginning that if you are working in a home with active COVID, that you would use the KN or KN95 or N95 mask. And so in terms of requirements of double mask, I would say if you find yourself in a situation where you do not have a mask or you're not assured of the fit of the mask, so you don't have the proper mask for an active COVID situation, and make sure that we really don't have them, because we do have some supplies that we are, have in case of emergency. But once you have confirmed that, you can get that information that Nina just shared with us about how to double mask. But again, you want to make sure that you do not have access or the possibility of access to the appropriate mask in those cases of active COVID.
And we do have PPE stockpiles at the Shared Services Office at 4700. And so if your program does not have any more KN95s, please reach out to Sheena McClinton, and we can send you many masks.
Hannah, did you have any more questions?
Nope, all good on my end.
Okay, thank you. And Sarah, let me check in with you. No.
No more for me.
All right. Marco, I am going to turn it over to you for closing remarks today.
Thanks, Sherry. And thanks everyone for participating. Nina, June, Ricky, again, your insight around all the things that we've discussed today has been incredibly helpful. So I appreciate you all sharing the various items that you have. I want to remind folks, Ricky shared some great information in her presentation to us in terms of how we are able to respond to disaster fatigue, COVID fatigue, pandemic fatigue, whatever you choose, however you choose to name it, or just fatigue in general, right? And there were 4 things, if you all remember the slide, calm the nervous system, do what we can to really, calm ourselves in the environment that we're now working in. Reflect and accept. Much about, that was also included in my opening to you all in terms of, appreciating and understanding and being aware of where you are and letting that determine some of the next steps you can take. Focus on what you can control. There are many things in a pandemic that we can't, but focus on what we can along the way. And stay physically distant, but not socially distant. A great reminder to use not only our community here at RHD, but each of the networks and systems of support we each have outside of our organization. But let's not forget the huge network we have that we're part of here as part of the RHD community. So I encourage everyone to take the time to pause, to reflect, to do what you need to do in order to focus on your well-being. Because obviously the folks that we support each and every day, your families, your neighbors, need you. And if you're not well, how can you support them? So with that, I will leave you all with a huge, again, thank you for all that you continue to do each day in supporting each other, supporting the folks that we serve, and have a great rest of your afternoon. Thank you, everyone. Oh, wait a minute, before you all go, I missed 2 important announcements. Hopefully no one stepped off, because these will be great announcements that you know, will have to pay attention to and be in tune to. First, our awesome employee support committee will be releasing a survey to all of our staff to really gauge what our staff needs in terms of support at this moment, but also to gain further insight into your understanding and feelings around the vaccine as we continue to embrace the vaccine in all of what we do, and also support our staff and the folks we support in getting the vaccine. And the second announcement is that we are also going to, and Sherry touched on this earlier, release a Q&A video from the awesome sessions that we've had thus far around where Nina has shared with us some great insight into the vaccine. So a Q&A that is very much focused on the vaccine, and hopefully a Q&A that you can also share within the community at your staff meetings and other gatherings of staff. So folks that can't attend this session have an opportunity to hear all that Nina has shared with us over the past few meetings. So then with that, I thank you all and have a great rest of your afternoon. Bye-bye.